Good. Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for May 23rd, 2016. We'll begin with the special order calendar decision items. Item number 1, 73241BZ, 100-17 Beach Channel Drive, Queens.
Okay, I think they responded to all of our concerns based on photos. The site looks much better. Anybody else have comments? Okay.
Continued hearings. Item number 2, 52864BZ, 224002 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
Okay, they requested another adjournment on this. That'll make 4. So this is the last adjournment, and after that, we take it off the calendar.
Item number 3, 17392BZ, 220 East 86th Street, Manhattan.
Okay, we got a letter dated earlier in May, and it says that they're still awaiting the sign-off on the fire alarm system, so I just want to know what the status is as of tomorrow or today.
Item number 4, 5795A through 5995A, 473, 474, 475, and 476 Central Park, West Manhattan. We received a request for an adjournment and change of counsel.
Correct.
Item number 5, 31806BZ, 4905 Astoria Boulevard, Queens.
Okay. Okay, they replaced the decayed wrought iron fencing with stockade fencing and installed landscaping. They installed new fencing along the property line with slatting and landscaping. I think without dragging this out any further, the only thing I noticed was that where they had landscaping, there was no curb to separate the sort of the earth from the asphalt, and they should install a curb there to make a clear separation. And I think the parking spaces were not striped. They need to be striped, but I consider having that be a condition of approval. But I would like to ask, because this has been going on for a long time with this site, and that they have a bad history of non-compliance, whether we give this a short leash. What do people think? You know, we could give them 5 years, something like that.
Yeah, maybe to just make sure that they keep the site up. And we can be assured maybe then the next time around, it looks like they've been
Well, it expired
good
in
about this.
2013, so if we gave them 5 years, they'd have to come back in 2018, which, to get a C of O and everything is a bit
Not
of
enough
work.
time.
It might be too short.
Because it's dating back to the expiration. Okay, so it would be 10, but but dating back to the
2013.
expiration.
Yeah.
Okay.
right.
Okay. So,
Next one.
yeah, let me just make a note. Okay.
Item number 6, 18909BZ, 3067 Richmond Terrace, Staten Island.
Okay, I think the only thing we were waiting, oh, I'm sorry. Extension of term, what's going on here? Sorry. I think the only thing we were waiting on was the approval on the sprinkler and the fire alarm, and to get approval from the fire department, so I think we could do that as a condition, as long as the fire department's okay with that.
I just had a comment about the parking, that I know the plan states something about parking is not required, but it was part of the variance, and it was part of the EAS review, so parking is required, and they have an easement agreement with Lot 20. They submitted some photos showing that this parking space is available, but I would like to just, that the resolution says that parking is required according to our grant.
Okay.
Had they striped the areas? I don't remember. Had they striped the areas?
No, they haven't.
for parking?
So they need to stripe them.
Maybe that's, we need to see.
Okay. Anything else? Pat?
New case is item number 7, 85353BZ, 240216 Knapp Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, I just wanted to see whether the facility is already occupied. It seemed like it is.
It is.
Yeah. So it's just really that they haven't gotten the C of O yet. They've done everything else.
I don't know if they've done the landscaping.
Yes.
What about the street trees?
The trees have not been
Oh,
planted.
not the street trees,
The
but the
street-
landscaping is in
Right.
place.
I was
I didn't think
going
there-
to ask if there was possibility to add additional landscaping along Avenue X. There is a little bit of a strip, if the box planter could be added, because there's a little bit of space between the last set of parking space and the property line, where box planter could be put, and if there's a possibility.
So the only tricky thing is, this is just an extension of time to complete, so now we're
I
going
see, so
back
we
and,
cannot add to that.
you know,
Okay.
requiring yet a new condition. I don't think that's our,
To me, the site looked nice.
Looks good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very good condition.
okay. It's more like if they came for a renewal on a term of years, then that's when we ask for an additional. Okay, so, and in terms of this, it would be under the same conditions as the prior grant, with a CO by June of 2018. Okay. Okay.
Item number 8, 69859BZ, 2773 Nostrand Avenue, Brooklyn.
So I see the spill closure report. I just want to make sure that that means that the spill has been totally remediated, because it's, the photos anyway show that the remediation equipment is still in place,
It is.
and it is. So not sure why then does the remediation equipment have to be there if it's a closed spill? And just wondering whether any of the required landscaping has been done.
No
None.
work has.
None.
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 When, I don't think they say when they would start construction either, do they?
No, they
No,
don't.
they said, yeah, so just talk about the construction.
Chair, I had a question, and this goes to this application and the application before that. As I was looking at the prior approvals, one of the conditions in both of them was that the pumps be set 15 feet back from the property line. I'm assuming it is, but from the graphics, it's not very clear for both of them. So if that could be confirmed. This is for both of the Knapp Street and this one.
Okay. So it's to clarify the location of pumps
Yeah,
on the plans,
yeah.
On both
Okay.
cases, Jessica.
on both cases.
And I was just wondering if they're changing, they're going to bring in a new tenant because that was their reason for the delay, and if it's going to change from a mobile to something else.
Okay. Okay.
Item number 9, 30-00BZ, 465, 469 West 165th Street, and 458, 464 West 166th Street, Manhattan.
So Community Board 12 provided a very careful analysis of the situation and recommended that in future the site be put to better use than an open parking lot, which I thought was an interesting way of looking at this, and recommended therefore that the grant should be for a shorter term than requested or limited to the duration of Columbia's lease that goes through 2019. That resolution, though, was only a committee vote, so I would like to see the full board's resolution on this. I didn't see a map that enabled us to follow along with a statement of fact descriptions of uses of the adjacent properties and the other parking facilities nearby and servicing Columbia and New York Press. It was, yeah, I was kind of wandering around looking for the places, but I didn't actually know what's what. I'd like to know whether the parking lot is regularly being used to capacity. I like a utilization rate because, for instance, the Google Earth image shows it pretty empty. And then also that they should show on the plan where the proposed changes to the layout are that are needed to accommodate the new survey information. They need to show the dimensions of all the spaces and the width of the drives. There are some spaces that do not appear to be 18 feet long. They should show the reservoir parking area for cars that are waiting to be picked up or parked. Show the bicycle parking area. Show on the plan the location of the new gate on 166th Street that is shown on the elevation, and explain what the purpose is for that, since there's no curb cut.
Yeah.
It's actually even, the
It's actually in bad
terrain is strange for having a gate, I don't know. Also, they should provide an image of the rate board that's required by the Department of Consumer Affairs, and also provide additional site photos. There's the one photo provided of the cinder block wall, shows temporary sort of corrugated metal sheeting separating the property from the adjoining property. I don't really understand what we're looking at. There should be, the parking lot should have proper opaque fencing installed all the way around its perimeter, between to isolate the residential and the institutional properties from the parking. Also, the attendant booth, I started getting all worried about the parking attendant. The attendant booth, as depicted in the detail, is an uninsulated wood box that may or may not even have electricity. I'm wondering, this is supposed to be 24-hour attendance, 365 days a year. How in the world is a person sitting there in the middle of the winter? I did note that there's a toilet facility located across the street that's in an apartment building or something across the street that the attendant has access to. I think that actually meets the minimum standard for OSHA, but I'm not really sure.
There's a porta potty on the site.
Say?
There's a porta potty.
Yeah, but I'm
on the
not sure
site.
that that's allowed to be the permanent solution. Needless to say, that could become really a nuisance if that's being used as a permanent solution. So, so we need more on that subject. But it's by OSHA, it's a requirement that there be access to toilet facilities. Anybody else?
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There is a very rusted sign on the sign post on the 166th Street side that overhangs onto the sidewalk that needs to be removed.
That's, okay.
And could they just clarify the ownership on the Consumer Affairs license? It lists SP Plus Corporation, but throughout the papers, we hear Sandy Realty or SMH Edgecombe Corp., so just to make sure that we know who's actually, maybe there's a different operator or it's a different company doing business as, I don't know, but they should explain.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
I just felt from the photo that they gave us of the interiors of the site, it looks really terrible.
Yeah.
And if they intend to get like a 10-year term, because this has been here for a while.
Yes.
They should really not even just do nice fencing, but maybe perimeter landscaping,
Okay.
unless they intend to give this site up for
Well,
development.
That's part of the community board's point. So either you give them a very short time so that they don't have to make those kind of improvements, though I do think they should have to put up proper fencing and not have it look like,
It's like each
homeless
lot seems to have
spot.
its own fence.
Yeah.
Some, graffiti panels, corrugated metal, masonry, it's like.
Those are probably put up by the neighbors. just
Yeah, I think
because,
so. Because they don't want to look at it.
Right, exactly. So, and also, there's some areas where it's probably too tight to put landscaping and still maintain the parking spaces. So that was the other thing. I think I left out that comment. There are places where the parking spaces don't look 18 feet and they're facing each other, and then there's the kind of a narrow drive-through, so not sure if that's wide enough to accommodate cars going in both directions. So they should show operation and circulation plan.
So I noticed there was a different number that was posted on the Consumer Affairs capacity limit. The Consumer Affairs capacity limit says 93, whereas the application before us is for 71 spaces. And with the fence being relocated, because based on the current survey, the fence has to be pushed back in. So now there is less amount of space. Within that, not only 71 parking spaces has to be provided as the document here states, but if the Consumer Affairs states the capacity limit is 93, I'm assuming we have to ensure this space also has to accommodate 93 parking spaces, and I don't know how that can be.
It doesn't have to, they got a license for that.
They have a license, okay, so it doesn't have to show.
No, they obviously applied for it
Okay.
when they shouldn't have done.
So the
because they
plan
had-
doesn't have to correspond to the capacity amount?
No, it should, I mean, they apply to the DCA for the number of allowable parking spaces. They're not supposed to apply for the number of not allowable parking spaces.
So, okay.
Unless this is reservoir or something and DCA counts that. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
Also, I had a question, yeah. Okay, one other thing. Okay.
Appeals calendar, continued hearing items, item number 10, 244 15A, 677 Fifth Avenue, Manhattan. There's an adjournment request. The applicants, we have already seen DOB submission. The applicants for submission is due May 25th, and we're adjourning this to June 14th.
Okay.
New cases, item number 11, 191 15A through 195 15A. This is Manila Street in Queens.
Okay, there was a little back and forth with DOT, and it seems like their submission is quite responsive to DOT's comments. I would kind of like to wrap it up with a DOT approval letter, but it seems like it was super responsive. And then...
We just got a letter.
Oh, we did?
Yes.
Today?
Everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Today?
No,
Friday.
It was a DOT sign-off? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the final letter.
Not, they say it's not in the capital plan.
Right,
you know,
okay.
Which may change in the future, that letter.
Right,
Which is
okay.
a DOT approval.
Right, because they responded to
Resolved,
the applicant, the DOT had submitted in April.
Right, but the DOT had wanted some changes to the drawings, so that was responding to the changes in the drawings that were
Right, this is
made?
a letter after, right, the
Okay.
May letter responds to that.
But it's still their stock letter.
Okay, that doesn't matter as long as they're okay with the changes. Okay.
We don't stamp the zoning analysis, right? Because their zoning analysis says that 10 spaces are required minimum per site, which is an error.
Want to correct that?
If we don't need to stamp it, then
No,
it's...
we're not.
Right, no, not the zoning analysis. Okay, and the fire department required sprinklers in all the buildings, and 250 feet from a hydrant maximum. Okay, so that would be the condition, even though it's also on the drawings. Okay.
Item number 12, 232 15A, 840 West End Avenue, Manhattan.
We need a community board recommendation, and more than anything, we need an LPC sign-off. I'm not convinced that this is something the LPC would approve. It's an extremely visible addition, so I'm not even sure what we're doing reviewing this if LPC isn't having it. But in addition to that, I find this actually a very tricky ask. We usually see increases in tenement buildings from 5 to 6 floors. This is being an increase from 6 to 7 stories. So in addition to not complying with the MDL, which is usually what we see, that it doesn't even comply with the 68 or the 2014 codes in terms of allowable height and construction class. So under the 68 and the 2014 codes, they would limit the height of this construction class to 4 stories and 50 feet. So yes, it's allowed to remain, but that is really compromising by adding yet another floor. And I know the CCI group and, their analysis has I respect their analysis of the situation, but I don't think they actually addressed the main question that is the delta between 5 and 7 stories is huge, right? They're like ignoring that it's 6 stories when most tenement buildings aren't 6 stories. I mean, that's actually so rare. And not only that, there's even a fireplace shown on the plans for the penthouse. I just sort of don't know what to say, right? Also, the drawings, though we got lots and lots of drawings, there wasn't any one drawing that said, this is where we're adding layers of sheetrock to the public corridors, this is where we're putting, well, we did get sprinkler drawings, but this is where we're putting sheetrock on the cellar, this is where we're enclosing the staircases, these are the details. We didn't get any of that. So they gave us all this stuff, but actually didn't address the specifics of how are we making this building safer and showing us the drawings that allow it. The other thing is the stacking plans show that at the time of application anyway, there were many vacant units, right? And then I went online and the BIS shows alteration 2s filed for basically every apartment in the building. So it means they were entering into all of the apartments to do work. According to that, then, they should be able to sprinkler the entire building. But I still go back to the MDL, not the MDL, the building code, because the prohibition on additions is for a fully sprinklered building that is of this same construction class, still limiting it to 4 stories and 50 feet. So even if they got it fully sprinklered, yes, it's better off than it was before, but now we're talking about adding a 7th floor. I'm not sure where that gets us in terms of equivalent safety, which is what our goal is. Also, we need details of the proposed addition with materials and fire ratings called out. So, it's kind of, there's a lot of little bits of stuff, but nothing enough for us to read the whole story. I'd like to know what the fire ratings of the cellar ceiling and public halls and stairs are. The fire escapes need to be labeled on the plans. We need a list on the drawings and called out in plan of the improvements to the fire ratings. We're missing the construction set that shows that what CCI described in the letter. So, because CCI goes into a lot of detail, but then we don't have that set of drawings. And I'd really like the fire department to review this really carefully on the entire idea. I'm really at a loss about this. Also, there wasn't a sprinkler plan provided for the proposed floor. And just the addition needs to meet height, setback, court, and floor area regulations, and we didn't get anything on that. Anybody else?
I think you covered most of my issues. I really needed to see sort of plans that delineated like 2-hour rated walls and 3-hour rated walls. They talk about it in a narrative, but they don't really, it wasn't clear to me on the plans. And I too was on BIS and couldn't understand why they wouldn't have just said they were going to sprinkle the whole building, because it looks like they're doing a lot of work in the entire building. They're going to be puncturing, demising walls. It just didn't seem
right. And they're
logical.
Combining apartments, so those are easy to sprinkler.
Exactly.
And I don't see that they were sprinklering and putting fire alarms and hardwired smoke detectors in all the units. Yeah.
Well, they state, the finding is the practical difficulty, and when half the apartments are vacant, and maybe now even more than half are vacant, then to me, there is no practical difficulty in going in and removing and reconstructing all of the interior non-bearing partitions and fire retarding all the floors and ceilings. So
Right.
I don't see that there's a hardship here.
Right.
And I think that, they're going to more than make up for this, because this is going to be beautiful market rate apartments, which it's marketing right now, because if you go to the site, they have these beautiful big signs that say what's coming,
It looks good.
Anything else?
And the website also already has this building being marketed. And one of my questions was the website cites 41 units. And
How many?
41 units.
41?
Whereas here, we are reviewing a plan which consists of 38 plus an additional unit. So I would like to know where the remaining units are, and this is not counting the supers unit.
Right.
So that's also another concern and I agree, I mean, these are all the concerns I've also been struggling with. The hardship is just not that justified.
Okay.
Do you want them to address the cell towers then?
The what?
They took the cell towers down and now they put them back up?
Cell towers don't, cell towers only go to fire safety if the fire department tells us this goes, don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we're looking at MDL waivers and.
No, I asked the fire
Right.
department to include it.
Okay. Mhm.
Right?
Okay.
Zoning calendar, item number 13, 10214 BZ, 4017 Avenue P, Brooklyn.
Okay. Sorry, let me just scroll. Okay. The parking analysis, actually, I found quite useful this time. It shows that the neighborhood's perception of available parking is accurate, because there's not on the immediate side streets, there are virtually no spaces available ever. However, just 2 blocks away on Flatbush, there are parking spaces available. Maybe that's because people don't want to pay the meters, I mean, I don't know. But it seems to me the only solution is to this problem that the neighbors complain of, is to require a parking monitor at the synagogue that stands in front of the building to allow drop-off only and to prohibit parking and double parking, and that we can condition approval on them requesting from DOT a no parking zone in front of the synagogue during whatever DOT determines to be the peak hours. And then also, they made corrections to the drawings. Fire department required full sprinklering of the synagogue floors and fire alarm or throughout. Smoke detectors throughout, and the drawings were amended to show that, so. Okay, and then in terms of, because I think based on this, I'd be ready to close. Is everybody else okay with that? Oh, it's already closed? Sorry, closed. So I'd be ready to vote then.
Decision.
So the conditions would be about installing the full sprinklering in the synagogue, the fire alarm system, the smoke detectors to be installed throughout, the trash to be stored inside with commercial pickup, sound installation of the sound attenuation that's required, and the site to be maintained free of debris. Also, that the children must play it within the confines of the property, to keep the activities of the congregation on the property and not spilling out onto the sidewalk, to have a monitor who monitors gatherings outside to keep at a minimum the amount of gathering and to reduce the nuisance of noise, control parking with a parking monitor, and request DOT no parking zone, and yeah. Okay.
Item number 14, 25315 BZ, 997 East 22nd Street, Brooklyn.
Okay. They put the notes that we requested on the drawings, so we can condition approval on my fear of them removing the entire structure. So no removal of existing first and second floor joists, and the existing exterior walls that are shown on the drawings shall remain, or the permit is void. That note's on the drawings too, but as part of our condition. Okay.
Continued hearing items. Item number 15, 4114 BZ, 2137 Waverly Avenue, Brooklyn.
Adjourn.
I think it's adjourned, but I just want to see. Yeah, nothing was submitted on this, and we're going to get an update on the status. Okay.
Item number 16, 15814 BZ, 1179 East 27th Street, Brooklyn.
Requested an adjournment on this.
Item number 17, 11-15BZ, 155 Dover Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, they submitted a letter, I found this kind of confusing, stating that Appendix G doesn't apply to this project because the work is not a substantial improvement at conveniently 47% of the value of the house. So having done lots of construction, the construction bid is never how much it costs. It always goes up by a minimum of 10 or 15%. So as soon as you didn't do that, then you're over the 50% of calculated value. So not sure what's that about. And then also, and then I don't understand, if you don't have to lift the house, then why lift the house? They're lifting it 2 feet. So also I noticed that the cost estimates don't show a figure for lifting. So that would probably increase the cost to over 50%. And then the statement of facts states that, I found actually there was still a lot of inconsistencies. The statement of facts states that the requested FAR went down, but there's a set of zoning calculations with the drawings, which I rely on very heavily. Those calcs show that it's the same FAR as previously requested. Also, those same calcs state that the wall height at 25 feet and 40 feet doesn't comply with section 23631B. I didn't understand where any of that's from. And then the plan calculations also show the wrong side yard widths. And then we asked at the last hearing, and that's all related to this, that all of the documents submitted be coordinated, and then they weren't. So the statement of facts says one thing, the BSA calcs say another, the calcs on the drawings say another, the drawings show whatever, and so it's impossible to figure out what's going on. You just have to decide, okay, I'm going to rely on this thing. This is the drawings, I'm going to rely on the drawings, and ignore the statement of facts, and ignore the calculations, and so on. Also, I would like the proposed depth of the rear yard to be clearly shown on the site plan and on the first floor plan. It's just very hard to find it. And ditto there isn't any dimension shown for the distance from the property line to the face of the second floor, which is set back significantly and I think may even comply with rear yard regulations. And then also, they say that that there isn't going to be new cellar area, but then there are zoning calculations that show the cellar being excavated, even though you look on the drawing, and it shows it's unexcavated, so please. We also asked that the height be brought down to be more in the 35-foot to 36-foot range, and instead it's 39 feet, and it seems like there's some room to go. And we also asked for clarification that the swimming pool area meets code requirements. I'd like them to clarify what they determined as opposed to sticking on a stand pat that just shows, if that's what they're still even called, that just shows all the regulations, right? As opposed to showing that it complies with the regulations. And then this one also, I would want to condition approval on that not more than 75% of the total existing floor area is not removed. Anybody else on this?
Well, I also questioned whether it was a substantial improvement because they didn't have things like markup or contingencies or anything in it, you know. And the purchase price, I think, was in question because we were previously informed that the building was in very poor condition, and we knew what the purchase price was, I think.
Oh, but it's not based on purchase price. It's based on a formula on the assessed valuation in the Department of Finance. You don't use actual figures. There's a given formula because, of course, you could overpay or underpay or whatever it is, and they don't want to.
So it's based on what the Department of Finance's market value is?
With a formula, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The formula was subtracting out the land value from the total value.
Okay.
And they are complying with Appendix G in terms of most, you know, they're providing a visual mitigation measure, they're lifting the floor, you know, at least 2 feet above the base flood elevation. but they're trying to keep their existing cellar. Of course, they are showing new cellar, which they can't do, no matter whether there's substantial improvement or not, but they're trying to keep their existing cellar. That would be the only difference, really.
Okay.
It doesn't seem to me that they're measuring the building height from the highest point of the building.
No, right, it seems like they...
There's a little tip above
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
And, yeah, like you said, the yards are incorrect, what they state. So I think they still have a lot, changes to do to the plans.
Yeah. It would help a lot if the architect and the applicant and their representative would just go scour through all the documents and make them consistent.
And also on the sections, since they're lifting, they should show the section of the new wall that's going to be installed. Because they're just showing a continuous foundation wall,
Right.
but they should show that it's lifted and they're going to have to be adding something there.
Okay.
Item number 18, 3915BZ, 7476 8th Avenue, Manhattan.
Okay, I have to recuse from this. Shoot.
So at our last hearing, the board asked the applicant to look at a scheme that used the residential C62A equivalent, which is the R8A model and is permitted in the district, which would result in larger floor plates and possibly a shorter building and bring it more in line with the residential neighbors. The R8A form allows, I think, for more generous floor plates, and the applicant has submitted a redesigned building, which is great, using the R8A. But however, the applicant makes the R8A work, but it increases the height. And I'm not sure exactly why that is. I was not necessarily convinced that a 20-foot higher building than what is permitted in the district of 120 feet, they're asking for 140 feet. I wasn't convinced that those additional floors was really warranted, and indeed why the building required the additional height when they've just kind of gerrymandered a little bit the heights that from before. They've increased the height of the floor-to-floor heights. So I'm not really sure why that is, and so I wasn't really convinced of that. And understanding maybe they're thinking that it's a corner building and it could maybe withstand a little bit more height and distinguishes them, but that's not what we're here really to look for. We're really to really see what the minimum variance is. So I had questions about that. I also questions concerning the financials, and I know Commissioner Otley Brown had some questions as well about the comparables and vacancy rates. And the applicant provided us with evidence of this from the structural engineer describing the MTA's wish that they not bear directly on the tunnel. But maybe Commissioner Montanez can discuss a little bit about what they presented to us and how that relates to what they're showing us as additional costs, and therefore translates to maybe this additional height that they think that they need. Again, I'm not convinced that we're at the minimum just yet. I appreciate the analysis of the R8A because I personally think that that's a better form for them and would lead to a lesser variance, but I haven't seen the evidence just yet that they're there. So let's maybe start with the A finding. Commissioner Montanez, maybe you want to talk a little bit about structure and about their floor-to-floor heights.
Right, yes. I thought that this new design was going to reduce their hardship in terms of the cantilever weight and some of the hardship costs, but they actually increased their construction costs by around $400,000, and piles and excavation were not reduced at all. So I understood the engineer's letter in terms of what the MTA was requesting. I think the only loading that's actually going to be put on the tunnel is a portion of the existing cellar, which is going to be retained and which will actually bear on the tunnel. The rest of the building will be cantilevered off the new foundation system. And I guess he's predicating that on the fact that the MTA told them that, well, you would have to be able to prove to us that the tunnels can take this, and he sort of says, well, how would we start doing that? You know, when would they be satisfied with that type of analysis? So they're just planning on cantilevering the building. But I was disappointed in terms of, you know, they go to a 5-story base with increased floor-to-floor heights, especially in the retail section. It seems to me that they just could put a 6th floor. They're not wed to the 60-foot street wall height. They could meet the adjacent building, which is, I think, a little bit higher. I was a little concerned that they seemed to think that the 10.1 FAR is a given, and I didn't understand that. And I agree with you that the 13th floor, to me, doesn't necessarily seem justified. So I think they should look at something with with less FAR.
Yeah.
And I would like them to explain why the hardship cost didn't reduce at all in this new scenario. In fact, the soft cost and the hard cost significantly increased.
Yeah, agreed. Anything else on the A finding?
No, I seriously think they do have an A finding, definitely, with the subway. I'm still a little concerned that the adjacent site had about a 64% impact from the subway, and this site has around a 34% impact from the subway, but their FAR request is much higher than what was given to the adjacent site.
Commissioner Shonda?
It still was not clear from the documents provided as to why the street wall heights were reduced to 60 feet, because there is room that allows for a higher street wall, which allows for larger floor plates. I know the question was that can that reduce the weight of the cantilevering and the cost of it, and as the documents have stated, it doesn't quite reduce it, so I'm not sure then why can't we go back to a higher street wall which maintains the same amount of cost factor and then at the same time keeps the building height down. And I don't think we have quite gotten to the second part of it. Are we okay with the 10.1 FAR? I don't think that discussion has gone that far. So I still am not sure this is the preferred alternative, at least from my end it's not. I would, and my questions have not been answered as to does this really address the cost factor? Does it bring down some of the hardship issues? It's adding to it.
It is.
So,
And it was a little counterintuitive.
Why would we consider this to be an option? I'm not getting it.
Commissioner Otley Brown, anything on the A or?
No, I agree with the other commissioners as well as you that there is an A finding here. The question is, how much waiver do they need in order to make them whole?
So why don't we move to the B finding? I know that you had some issues concerning some of the comparables, as I did, because I thought perhaps they were working in areas outside of.
Well, I had raised a number of questions in the previous hearing, trying to get at the actual value of this property by getting at the actual income that this property is going to generate. And I found that my questions were not satisfactorily answered from my point of view. And so I'm going to just run down the list of things that were requested as well as a few things that changed that weren't. To start with, the construction costs, like everybody stated, have gone up. However, there's no narrative in the financials that explains what the increases are for and why the increases are necessary. I did raise a question about the real estate tax calculation, and I found that discussion to be a valid discussion. I accept their response to me on that. As for the retail rents, I had raised a question that I felt that the comparables were not appropriate comparables. I felt that they were all small and older buildings and probably not in as good condition. I asked for more comparables. The new comparables that were used, they had stated had glass and steel frontages. And they did have glass and steel frontages, but in all of the comparables except for one, they were in older buildings. They were not well-constructed frontages, and they did have what were the old standard floor-to-floor heights, and they were not located on a prime corner with dual frontage access. The subject building has 17-foot 4-inch floor-to-floor height on the first floor. The subject has a beautiful glass frontage. It's in a prime corner location, and none of the comparables are getting at this value that this building has in terms of its retail space. Only comparable number 3 comes close with an asking rent of $200 a square foot for the first floor and $100 per square foot for the cellar. So I am not accepting any of the other comparables that were given to value this property, and I think that the retail space needs to be put in at $200 a square foot for the first floor, $100 a square foot for the cellar. The office rents. I had a question about the office rents because the previous comparables were for smaller office spaces in older buildings, except for one comparable, which was 860 Washington Street, which is a new building. I did receive new comparables with larger floor plates, and so the rents given were adjusted slightly upwards. However, most of those comparables were not indeed comparable. They were older loft buildings that may have been renovated, but they did not appear to be Class A space, and therefore they would not command prime prices. This subject building is going to be a brand-new Class A building located central to various types of public transportation. Most buildings that were the comparables used were old refurbished lot buildings, and they have lower rents. The only comparable that I think comes close to valuing this space is 860 Washington Street, which is put in at $80 a square foot. They need to raise the average square footage used for the proposed to $80 a square foot. The vacancy rates. I made a comment about the 10% vacancy rate being too high, and I cited the Cushman Wakefield 2015 fourth quarter report for Midtown South, which had that vacancy rate at 6.2%, with the submarket of Chelsea at 5.1% and Hudson Square at 6.7%. This property is located on the border of Chelsea and Hudson Square submarkets. An 8% vacancy rate is still too high. I don't know where 8 was pulled out of the air, probably. It should be a blend of those different rates that I quoted. It should be 6%. If they build back the income that seems to be missing from this analysis, they can get anywhere from $350,000 to $400,000 extra dollars in income, which when capitalized would lead to a higher property value, which means that with the 6% capitalization rate, this is not the minimum variance. And so I would like to see them build the income back into the property using the same indicators that they have used before, which means basically don't change anything else that we have not requested be changed. Keep everything else the same, build the income back in, capitalize that, let's see what the value looks like. I definitely believe that they can shave floors off of this building.
Anything else? So I think the applicant can get an understanding that although, and I think we gave them direction, which was good for the R8A, we were really looking for a building that sort of stayed within that form, did not sort of overreach, and it appears that both on the financials and in just looking at the FAR that's being requested, that we feel that they can cut this back and they can get more value out of the building. Great. Marjorie back.
New cases, item number 1, 9315 BZ, 1011 Reeds Lane, Queens.
Did you skip one?
No.
19? 19?
What's 19?
997 East 22nd Street? Is that-
No, that's, oh, we got the old one. That's,
I printed the latest one that came out, so, all right,
Okay, sorry.
it's later than on this list.
all right,
10, 11 reads should be.
all right, sorry.
So it's 9315 BC, 1011 Reed's Lane, Queens.
Just noting, this is a very long, narrow trapezoidal site that's difficult to develop without side yard waivers. But just trying to understand the site, there's an entry condition labeled men's. I don't know what that means. Is that the men's entrance from the street? If that's the case, then where is the women's entrance? If no, is that a men's room that leads into the lobby or the vestibule? It's like,
That question
looks
too.
like that. The architect's letter makes reference to 2 vestibules. I don't find the second one, and I'd like to know how they work. The statement of fact states that there's a multi-purpose room in the cellar for refreshments after services and for children's play during services and youth education. It's shown as an open cellar, basically, with no occupancy. So the architect's letter states that the occupancy down in the cellar is for over 200 persons. That's not shown on the plans at all. And I assume that the occupancy is simultaneous with the other floors if you're going to put kids down there, so that's a lot of people. Also, it's not clear if the second floor is the woman's floor, probably is. If that's the case, though, what's the disabled access to it and to the multipurpose floor? Answer, none. There's a proposal for a long ramp in the front yard. We've seen this in other cases. This forces people onto the public sidewalk instead of within the property lines. The ramp should be removed and the entry should be at grade. No reason to lift the building unless you're in a floodplain, which this isn't, as far as I can tell. They should correct the notation on the west elevation that refers to the front yard as a rear yard. On the same elevation, there's this blank unrendered area. I'd like to know what that is. At 35 feet high, the building complies. Oops. Oh, sorry. At 35 feet high, the building complies with the regulations, but appears to be taller than the neighbors. It seems the attic level could be brought down to be more in line with them. And also, they should obtain accurate height measurements of the neighbors. I'd like to also have them discuss and study the impact of 500 to 700 people attending services on the neighborhood, on pedestrians, on traffic. In terms of the children playing around in the yard, we know that that's an issue about disturbing neighbors. How will the children be attended to? Also, so they should provide a pedestrian parking and traffic studies. The EAS doesn't mention any of these. I'd also like to understand what kind of noise attenuation efforts will be proposed on the windows and walls. And they should provide a site plan of the proposed project that includes the adjoining properties and the locations of their houses to help us understand the impact of the reduced side yards on all of the neighbors. And they should provide photos of the adjoining side yard and rear yard conditions and citations to all the relevant side yard regulations. Let's see. Yeah, they did provide responses to the 2535 CPC parking certification special permit. They went through that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I had questions about the actual occupancy load in the building. It wasn't really clear to me what was going on in the cellar. And I'd like to know what functions or events would be held by members that people might be driving to, or that they, have a bus that brings, people in. So there might be parties that aren't held necessarily on a weekend. So I think they need to discuss that a little bit more. Also, yeah, there's no handicapped accessibility either to the second floor or the cellar. And they need to show us what the cellar layout is actually going to be. I don't think that you can enter a bathroom through the stair egress. So that's on the second floor. I think he needs to relook at that and rejigger his little lobby area there. And also show us why the as-of-right layout doesn't work. He poches the areas for the side yard waivers, but he doesn't actually show how maybe moving some of the seating around might accommodate the actual side yard. And yeah, I want to see what the side yard conditions are, so photographs, so that we can discern what's going on either side.
I think they haven't, well, it's in a residential neighborhood, so I think, of course, the front yard should have some landscaping, and they haven't told us what they propose to do in terms of screening to the adjacent neighbors, which should include plantings also, so the 5-foot, side yard may not be adequate. And I thought they should give us more information regarding their anticipated growth. Right now, they have 260 adults, and they're asking for seating for 417, which is a big jump to me. So I think, there's a potential to perhaps reduce the width or the length of the building.
Okay, anybody else?
I think you've all raised my questions. There's just a little correction on the drawings. On the side yard, it refers to zoning resolution section 4325. It should be 2435.
Okay. Where is that?
P004, and I think it's in other plans also, in the as-of-right also. It's just a correction, but
Okay. Okay.
Item number 2, I'm sorry.
Anything else? No? Okay. Anybody else?
Item number 2, 27115BZ, 1842 Victory Boulevard, Staten Island.
Okay, the community board approved this on condition that the geometrics of the parking plan be designed to direct existing traffic northbound only onto Leicester Street towards Victory. And the borough president opposed the application, and of course, we don't normally hear from the borough president on these, and so that makes it a particular note. It says the use was abandoned and shouldn't be continued, and that there shouldn't be a drive-through. The borough president was concerned about having use group 6, and also then getting the use group 6 scale of commercial, and then also getting the special permit for the service station. So I would like them to respond to the borough president's concerns, who obviously comes out of real understanding of the neighborhood issues. And then I was just confused that the application provided a bunch of attachments without telling us what they were for. So there's attachments 1 through 4, one of which is about Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know why. We need a photo key map. There are a bunch of photographs provided, but I don't know where they're taken. They should specify the type of dense shrub that will meet the requirements of the special permit. They should label what that 11 by 10 enclosure is, showing the materials, and describe its use. I'm assuming trash, but I don't know. If it is trash storage, it needs to be an opaque enclosure, and it needs to be moved away from the residential property. They should also state on plans that the drive-in will have no illuminated menu board or amplified sound source. Anybody else?
It wasn't really clear to me that sort of the nature of that drive-through, exactly, what they expected, how many cars, and it just wasn't clear to me exactly how that drive-through was going to work. It's, I was there, and it seems like it's a small-ish site for the amount of things that are going to be happening. So moving cars physically around the site, plus then having cars parked, it just, seemed very tight to me. And I'd like to see some study done on how many cars they expect to come out on Leicester, because it's really smack up against that residential building. And it would have seemed to me that if you had a lot of cars kind of streaming through there, that could be a real nuisance. So indeed, yes, talk about the noise from, people blowing their horns or lights at night, that sort of thing. And I think we really have to kind of flesh that out a little bit more. Let's see, what else was I going to say? Oh, and yeah, they're talking about 10 employees on the site. So this is going to be a heavily used site, and I think the application doesn't really speak to the amount of use that's right up against the residential.
Yeah,
I had similar.
well, let's just go in order. Yeah.
They showed on their site plan only about 4, maybe 5 reservoir spaces, and I believe they're supposed to have 10 from the payment window.
Right.
And so they need to show that on the plans. It's especially important when they don't have a menu board that's an automated menu board, because it means that people are getting to the window and ordering something,
thinking
which is
about,
going to take even longer.
yeah.
Right.
So they definitely need to show reservoir spaces, all 10 of them.
And an operational plan on how they anticipate this thing working.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Their transportation analysis included just the traffic from the gas station, which was 56 trips per hour, but they failed to include the trips from the drive-through, and the one drive-through they gave us had a peak of 129. So that wasn't included. All of the traffic is going to go through that one intersection at Leicester and Victory, which I have some concern about. I'm concerned about circulation on the site, because if you wanted to both go to get gas and go to the drive-through, it's not possible.
You have to come back out again.
Yeah.
You have to go back out, and right, and if you decide to park and go into the convenience store, then you have to go through the drive-through to get out. There's no bypass lane. The other thing is the gas pumps, the lane closest to Victory Boulevard doesn't seem to line up with the curb cut.
Right.
And I think that's because you can't have the curb cut a certain distance from an intersection. So I would think they have to move the gas pumps back, which would interfere with the one bypass lane or the parking in front of the facility. So I agree that I think it's a bit tight for these two uses. Also, I didn't see how, they said they were only going to sell coffee and buttered rolls, but how would we enforce
Can't.
that?
You
And
can't.
why does that need a drive-through?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It's kind of like-
Well, the donut place has a drive-through. I guess that's their closest equivalent. They're not making donuts.
Right.
But usually they're not associated
Yeah.
with a gas station. I would like to know if there's anything like this anywhere in New York City, because it's an unusual setup.
Yeah?
So I think you've raised all my concerns. I definitely don't see the curb cut alignments with the way the vehicular movement is, and it almost would seem like vehicles are going to just go right into the sidewalk, and it just, flow of traffic does not comport with the drawings here. And I'm not quite sure, is this primarily a gas station, or is it a retail store where drive-through? Because this looks like two separate operations operating on this site. And as you have all stated, it's too small of a site for both of these operations to happen, function in this manner.
And it might be even three uses, because they just listed as an office on the second floor, and not really sure.
Yeah,
That's
what's the
a
office
separate-
use?
Oh, I didn't even
Right.
think of that.
That's, yeah, and
It's not, no, it's not trying to be, because it's a use group, it's a commercial district in which you can have use group 6. So that's what they're doing. They have use group 6 and the special permit application. And that's what the borough president referred to, that you shouldn't be allowed to double dip. And he was even questioning the convenience store use on the site, so. Okay.
I mean, if it was a traditional convenience store without a drive-through, and then you can move the building back, you can
Right.
probably make the site circulation work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Item number 3, 278-15BZ, 3556 Bedford Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay, just noting the requested FAR of .96 is on the very high side for the social block. There's only 2 houses on this side of the block and none on the other side that have .96 or greater FAR. With respect to the rear yard, noting immediately adjacent properties to the rear have 15-foot rear yards, but there was no information provided about the depth of the second story of those houses. It would really help if the Sanborn map that was provided would show us what the height of those are and the measurements, because we can't really tell from photographs. The houses to the immediate rear have complying or nearly complying rear yards. So kind of in compromise to that, I think if the second and attic floors were pulled back to 25 feet, but the first floor was the 20 feet, then this would make sense for this neighborhood, this location. Also, the attic form is very strange. You know, maybe it's where the sections are taken each time, but it's extremely strange. And so that always tells me that something is wrong, because that I was always taught if it's an ugly section, it's a bad building. And it's also unnecessarily high, it seems to me, for no purpose. So it should be reduced in height and pulled back. The dimensions on the existing elevation show 31 feet, not 28 foot 5 for the rear yard. I don't know. The plans also show some interior walls to remain, but that's not accurate if you look where things are. This entire building is being gutted on the interior. If you just look where the staircase is, it's moving. So the drawing should be corrected to accurately show interior and exterior walls to remain. And the data on the drawings needs to match the survey. And to understand better the roofline condition, we really should have an axonometric. Any other comments?
I do think there was a real need to reduce the side yard where the dining room is, because it appears that they're just bumping out to get the entry, but then they follow that through into the dining room, and it sort of makes this odd sort of form, that, you know, this bump out form. So it seems to me that it's an added piece of construction that doesn't really need to be there, and one could have a more generous side yard than making that side yard smaller. Also, I agree the existing walls don't line up floor to floor, and it just seems kind of strange. Some walls that are going to remain won't have joists that they would sit on at any point because you've removed that from below. So it seemed strange. I think they just have to overlay the plans and make sure that where they said they're keeping walls and keeping joists, that it's consistent. And I too was concerned about that funky roof line. It seems in the back, why bump that up so much higher and make it sort of a strange kind of hodgepodge on the roof, when you could simply be at one level and it would be much easier to construct and look better. So those were my issues.
I was just curious if they were including the covered entryway in their floor area. And when they do an area study, you know, they talk about how many houses are this, but I would always like to know how many homes are in the universe, you know, like how many homes are within 400 feet. So it makes sense to me, so it's relevant.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay.
That's it.
This
concludes the public hearing. This concludes the review session
20
for
seconds.
Monday, May 23rd, 2016. We have another one?
We did it.
Oh, we did it. Oh, we did it. 14, that was number 14. Okay. Right.
Oh, I see.
It got moved to the other
to
side,
the
yeah.
decisions. It was listed twice.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,